Thank you so much. And in fact, we do see some of the defectors up there at the dais, and we see a gaveling in. Let's go ahead and listen to a little bit, and I want to bring in Scott as well to talk about what might be happening. Let's go ahead and listen.
Mr. Norman is recorded as Jordan.
House will be in order.
Mr. Norman, Johnson. Mr. Self is recorded as Donalds. Mr. Self, Johnson.
Now he has 217. All right, if you guys can hear me, it looks like Representative from Texas, Keith Self, just changed his vote to Speaker Johnson. As Nicole was explaining, the first round of the vote wasn't closed yet, and so lawmakers could still go up and change their vote. And we now see lawmakers who are applauding him and shaking his hand. Now, what's not clear to me is that we know Thomas Massie was always a hard no on Johnson, whether Ralph Norman also changed his vote. I'm going to go ahead and bring Nicole in. Nicole, is it clear to you if Johnson just secured the votes? Because he's getting hugs now.
Yeah, I think we should wait for the final tally to be read by the clerk. But as I said, going into this right before we took that break to listen to what was happening on the House floor, again, the Speaker can afford to lose one vote. So if that continues to be Tom Massie, he should have the votes needed to clear the hurdle. And that's why with Keith Self and Ralph Norman switching their votes, that was critical. As I just mentioned, all they needed to do was switch to express their support for Speaker Mike Johnson, and he would likely have what he needed to get over the finish line. And so I think that's why you're seeing people shaking his hand, why you were seeing him get some pats on the back, some hugs, because this should clear the hurdle to enable him to secure the gavel, which is what he wanted to do all along on the first ballot. That's what his leadership team told us. They were confident. They felt they could do it on the first ballot. They didn't want this to go into multiple rounds, although they were prepared for the possibility it could go to a second or third round. So if, in fact, he has now secured those votes, which the clerk will make official with the official tally, then, of course, this is a victory for Mike Johnson, who did, from the outset, express confidence that he could keep his conference unified behind them, and really stressing the importance of that at such a critical time with the president-elect set to take office in just a few weeks. In fact, the leader already has some strategy, or the speaker, rather, already has some strategy sessions scheduled this weekend to start talking about how they plan to expedite the president-elect's policy agendas, primarily through a process called budget reconciliation. He was also scheduled to meet with leadership for a retreat. So all of these things are critical to kind of get everything in place for when the president-elect assumes office January 20th. The last thing the speaker wanted was to have to put that on ice, put it on hold, to let this process drag out even further. So again, with those two lawmakers switching their votes, it does appear that the Speaker Johnson may have the votes he needs to assume the gavel for the 119th Congress.
All right, Nicole, thank you so much. We are going to go now to a CBS News special report as Representative Mike Johnson appears to have secured the gavel in what still is the first round, technically, of the vote.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Good day, everyone. We're coming on the air now with breaking news as the 119th Congress convenes on Capitol Hill. You see the House floor right there. It appears, and that is the clerk of the House, preparing to announce that Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, has been reelected Speaker of the House of Representatives. It took quite some time to achieve this on the first ballot. Some hour and 30 minutes on the first ballot. Johnson was not elected. There were 3 Republican holdouts. He could only afford to lose one Republican vote, but after lots of conversations in the cloakroom and interventions by other House Republicans supporting Speaker Johnson, those votes were secured, and Johnson is reelected as Speaker at the start of this 119th Congress. Johnson, of course, was elected Speaker the first time in October 2023 after the then Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, was ousted. That, as you might remember, led to weeks of party infighting that left the chamber in chaos. This is the first time in 6 years here in Washington that Republicans will control the House, the Senate, and the White House. Let's listen to the House floor.
The Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress. The clerk appoints the following committee to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark.
As the House of Representatives goes through some pro forma procedures to make sure that the election of the new Speaker is formally recognized, I want to bring in our congressional correspondent, Scott McFarland, who joins us from Capitol Hill. Scott, this took a bit of time, but it was an imperative, or certainly a great desire, of Speaker Johnson and his team to secure this on the first ballot after some 1 hour and 30 minutes. It did so.
And let me explain what's happening next, then I'll tell you about the drama that led up to this moment. The man you just heard, the man you see there, is Kevin McCumber. He's the U.S. House Clerk. He's actually in charge of the floor until the Speaker is elected. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, is going to introduce the new Speaker of the House, same as the old Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson of Louisiana. But this vote went twice as long as it was scheduled to go because there were 3 defectors, the ones you named, and Mike Johnson could only afford one defector. One of them was Thomas Massey of Kentucky, who has been a contrarian for many years here, often voted against leadership. He says his vote was not flexible. The other 2, a man named Keith Self from Texas and Ralph Norman from South Carolina, who are Freedom Caucus members who have been jockeying in recent months to try to exert more influence on the powerful Rules Committee, which controls legislation on the House floor, has outsized impact. They voted for somebody besides Mike Johnson, so they kept this vote open. And moments ago, Ralph Norman of South Carolina and Keith Self of Texas came back to the clerk, changed their vote to Johnson, and by a 1-vote margin, the narrowest possible, Mike Johnson resumes his position as Speaker of the House. But Major, there's a bigger story here. Those members have just marked their territory for the months to come. They have shown how fragile this remarkably narrow majority is for House Republicans, even as Trump takes office. And there are much more challenging votes to come than picking a speaker, including the debt ceiling, funding through the border, and other initiatives Trump wants quickly.
Scott McFarland, just for the benefit of our audience, you mentioned the importance of the Rules Committee. Nothing comes to the floor unless it flows through the Rules Committee, unless it's going to happen via suspension of the rules, and that requires a large bipartisan majority, necessarily bringing in House Democrats as your negotiating partner. So if you're the majority party, the Republicans, and you want the Rules Committee to function, you need it to be an instrument of leadership. But in those cloakroom conversations that led to the 2 votes you just mentioned being switched, we are probably awaiting some definition as to what changed in the minds of those who initially did not support Speaker Johnson and support him now, and the fate and future of that very same Rules Committee.
Yeah, I'm sorry for doing this on a Friday, but here's a poli-sci lesson. The House Rules Committee has outsized influence. You can't get things on the floor for a vote without the Rules Committee approving it. If Mike Johnson has done what happened last Congress and put some Freedom Caucus ultra-conservative hardliners on the Rules Committee, things may get jammed up there. And that's been the problem for Republicans over the past 2 years. Things got jammed up in the Rules Committee, so when they got to the House floor, they had to circumvent the rules and have Democrats necessarily vote to pass things. That's why Mike Johnson has had criticism so far. If he has set up the Rules Committee again because of these defections elections today, the same way it's composed over the last 2 years, they could be traffic jam after traffic jam on big pieces of legislation, and they would need Democrats to pass things Donald Trump wants. That's quite a quagmire.
Scott McFarland, as you well know, few people on television enjoy a poli-sci lesson better than I. Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, any day of the week. Speaking of Donald Trump, you invoked the name of the president-elect. I want to turn now to Ed O'Keefe, who joins us from West Palm Beach. He's our senior political and White House correspondent. President Trump, President-elect Trump, weighed in on this in several measures. Ed O'Keefe, and in the main, though it took a while, got what he wanted.
He did, but for lack of a better term, Major, this was messy. And it's a preview of things to come as Republicans take total control of Washington. While he did win by just one vote, Speaker Johnson demonstrated here how difficult it's going to be to get agreement among fellow Republicans on big things going forward, whether it's a new tax plan, whether it's a big budget resolution that will include the language changing immigration policy that the president-elect campaigned on and expects to be passed quickly by a Republican-controlled Congress, whether it's a suite of other policy issues with which there's big disagreement among congressional Republicans over how to proceed. This is a president who wants to move quickly, expects Congress to move quickly, that has added more days to its legislative calendar in the first months of this new year to do so. But what we saw today was a demonstration of how difficult that is. And consider the fact that a president-elect who won millions more votes than all congressional Republicans combined, raised hundreds of millions of dollars more than they did, and said, I want this speaker elected, struggled today and in the last few days to ensure that there were enough votes there for him. A win is a win, but it was messy, and it's a good demonstration of what's to come. We know the president-elect was on the phone this morning with some of those holdout lawmakers trying to get them to yes. It appears to have worked. There were phone calls reportedly here in the last hour or so between officials here in Palm Beach and there in Washington to get those lawmakers over the line. But it's a reminder that given the closely divided nature of the House, where there are going to be 3 Republican vacancies very soon because those 3 are set to take positions in the Trump administration, and where there's only a 3-vote margin over in the Senate with a handful of moderates who may swing one way or the other, we are entering a very closely divided, if Republican-controlled time in Washington that could lead to a lot of messiness as Republicans try to achieve their goals.
As we think about this messiness, one thing that the Trump transition wanted to avoid, as you well know, Ed O'Keefe, is any messiness leading up to January 6th, where the Congress needs to be fully organized to certify President-elect Trump's election. That's now going to happen in regular order come Monday. To recap for everyone, Congressman Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, has just been narrowly reelected Speaker of the House of Representatives. This after 2 Republican congressmen changed their votes. Our coverage on this matter will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and of course, a wrap-up tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Good day.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Lindsay Reiser, and to catch you up to speed, House Speaker Mike Johnson has been reelected as Speaker of the House. Now, he won the vote after one round of voting. He appeared to lose that first round of voting with 3 defectors, but 2 of those actually changed their vote before that first round was finished, thereby securing the gavel for Johnson. And we did hear cheers, and there were many people applauding him and hugging Johnson as well. Now, I do want to go to Maura Gillespie. She is a Republican analyst and former advisor to former Speaker Boehner and Representative Adam Kinzinger. Maura, so good to see you and hear your 2 cents. We just heard in the special report Ed O'Keefe say, look, a win is a win, but this was messy. Do you agree?
It was, but it was really important that this got done in the first vote. And so I think that's why you saw Speaker Johnson's team extend the vote and hold it open for as long as it took to get this done, because going into a second vote series would have allowed some of those members who didn't vote immediately, who abstained from voting at the beginning when their names were called, they could have then flipped and caused a little more problems for the Speaker's team in getting this done. And so without wasting any more time and political capital, it was definitely a win, but a messy one indeed.
Do you think that Speaker Johnson knew about the 9 going in? I mean, we had the 3 defectors who voted against Johnson. We had 6 House Freedom Caucus members who chose not to vote and then vote after. Do you think that he knew those margins going into today?
I don't know that he knew the full 9 would do it, and I'm not necessarily sure if Congressman Baird meant to do that. It seemed as though he kind of was a little confused. But even still, it was definitely the Freedom Caucus flexing and showing Speaker Johnson that they have the numbers should there come a time when they don't like what he's done. And you've seen Chip Roy do that in the past. Leading up to this vote today, he has pretty, vocally said that he wanted to be the Rules Committee chairman. And he got on the Rules Committee. I'll just remind viewers, he got on the Rules Committee during the Speaker McCarthy showdown and in that negotiation. So he's really been angling for this position, and he's got people in the Freedom Caucus who back him for it. I don't see it happening. You saw Virginia Fox, a congresswoman from North Carolina, on the floor there being part of these conversations because she is seen as a front runner for that position for chair of the Rules Committee. So it definitely is an interesting dynamic, but they were definitely flexing today by showing him we can oust you if we want to.
So we had former Congressman Upton on prior to the Speaker securing the gavel. He actually said he thought it was going to go relatively smoothly today. He turned out to be right. But he did also mention the really thin margins that Johnson is going to have come inauguration, when Republicans are going to lose 3 more seats to the cabinet, and it could take months to replace those. Do you think that this portends any difficulty for the GOP in getting any of the legislation and priorities through?
It does if you have this threat from the far right flank that doesn't have any interest in recognizing how things get done on Capitol Hill. They cannot just say cut everything that we want to get cut without recognizing that there is an entire other side of the chamber they need to work with, an entire side of the other aisle they need to work with to get that done when they don't have the numbers to get their bills done in good faith and good earnest. And I think that they're failing to be honest with their constituents about the plan because they don't have one. It's fine. It's all fine and good to say that you abstain or you don't agree with X, Y, and Z, but you don't have to say how you would get your plan done. That's a disservice to their constituents, but also to the incoming president who has an agenda he'd like to get done and can't do it if he has these people on the far right flank who are obstructing Mike Johnson's work.
Maura Gillespie, we appreciate your time and your expertise as always. Thank you so much. I want to go to CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian, who I believe is still in the hallway there. Nicole, what new are you hearing from sources about whether Johnson is pleased with how today went, the fact that it was the first round? Does he consider that a win, even though, as Ed mentioned, it was a little messy to get there?
Yeah, well, I think it really doesn't matter. He likes to use football analogies a lot, so I would imagine the Speaker kind of views this as a win is a win. I mean, look, he was very confident going in that he could get there on the first round. He told reporters he believed that they were close, that they were getting there. His team also projected that similar confidence that they had hoped he could do this on the first ballot, but they were prepared to go an extra round or two if it came to it. And I think part of the reason why they were pretty bullish from that standpoint is there really was no formal challenger to the Speaker. So even though he was facing some opposition, there wasn't another name readily available in the hopper to pull out that could have the votes. And that was pretty much what we witnessed during the whole protracted, ballot and rounds after Speaker McCarthy was ousted. It was like name after name came up, but they couldn't muster the votes to get to that 218 magic number. And so with the Speaker today being so close, it really came down to being able to flip not only those holdouts who didn't necessarily support the Speaker the first go round with the roll call, but then came back and did support him, but then those additional holdouts who uttered a different name during the roll call vote. And so being able to flip people like Ralph Norman and Keith Self were critical to the Speaker being able to secure the gavel for a second time around. I did earlier speak with Georgia Congressman Rich McCormick, who was wavering in his support a couple of days ago, but ultimately decided to back the Speaker. I spoke to him kind of during this period of suspense when we were waiting to see what happened. Take a listen to what he told me.
So just get us up to speed. We obviously saw how the vote played out. What is the mood inside the room right now?
I think people are still calm and hopeful. I think some people are movable. We just need a couple more, and I think we'll be there. I'm hoping that the 3 people who voted against the Speaker will come around, at least two of them. I think Massey may not be movable, but the other two I'm hoping for.
And what was your reaction to Chip Roy and some of the other members? Obviously, they did not specify their choice kind of on the first roll call, but then the clerk came back and, we heard Roy, Andrew Clyde, and others who said that they do now back the Speaker. How significant is that development?
It is, but realize that there's still leverage to be played out. When you have this narrow of a majority, it gives you incredible leverage to get what you want. I think there's negotiations right now that this could get worse instead of better, but I'm hoping not.
Well, what makes you say that?
Just listening to people and what they're saying.
So again, for a while, it looked like things could potentially be on the ropes for Speaker Mike Johnson. But as you see there now, he is now being led back into the chamber by a bipartisan escort committee where he is receiving a rousing applause after securing the gavel for the 119th Congress. Let's take a listen to a little bit of sound from the floor as he makes his way down the main aisle.
Thank you so much for that, Nicole. We appreciate all of your reporting. I do want to go now to our CBS News congressional correspondent, Scott McFarland. Scott, as we watch Mike Johnson make his way, I do want to ask you, I know that you and our Capitol Hill team will be doing plenty of reporting over the next hours and days. Any idea right now what Johnson may have had to give Keith Self and Ralph Norman to get them to yeses?
Yeah, he had been unequivocal as the day began that there will be no side deals. And there's a precedent that happens when you make a side deal. You start to have to do that the entire Congress, and we saw that in 2023. That dogged Kevin McCarthy through his brief speakership. Whatever he had to give to get the speakership ended up making it an unmanageable majority for him. Mike Johnson already has a Herculean task. With such a narrow majority, you start giving out things in concessions, you make it all the more challenging. What you're seeing here is Johnson meeting with some of his closest allies, but if you look closely every now and again, you'll see children. You'll see people who are not official members of Congress, because this is a big day for some moms and dads. There are newly elected members of Congress who are going to get sworn in as soon as there's a speaker. That was supposed to have happened already. They will, after officially swearing in Mike Johnson as the next speaker, swear in all other 430-plus members of the U.S. House, including the newcomers, including those who brought children here today. And as somebody who has children under the age of 13, I can tell you it's difficult to keep them in their seats for 4 hours, as some of these moms and dads have had to do during this protracted, prolonged drama. But Mike Johnson, I think, has secured the speakership, but also recognized, perhaps no surprise to him, that this is going to be a very challenging, if not treacherous, majority to govern. This is supposed to be the easiest vote of all. Picking a speaker should be simple. A simple yes, no, get it done, move on to the next task. He has much harder votes to come, and he has to navigate those same contrarians, those same dissenting voices, Lindsay, inside his own party.
Scott, hang out just in case we do hear from Speaker Johnson, but I want to go back to senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. And we're going to be watching this shot very closely to see if Speaker Johnson does go up to the microphone. But I want to ask you something that we heard from Representative McCormick in Nicole's interview. When you have such tight margins, each member has a lot of leverage.
They do. We talked about this earlier, about how, when it comes to all sorts of matters in the coming weeks and months, as a Republican Congress and a Republican White House work together, they know there's a 3 or 4 vote margin at most. If you need me, you're going to have to give me what I want. And so we will watch as they begin working, especially on a budget resolution, which is expected to include a lot of changes to federal spending and other domestic policy, most especially immigration. Whether, for example, lawmakers from the Northeast say, if you want me on the tax bill, fine, but you got to make changes to how my communities get to write off their property tax bills, or you've got to extend certain tax credits to certain groups of people. What we're going to see here now is the traditional handing of the gavel from the minority party to the majority. So let's listen in.
My honor and a distinct privilege to welcome you to the People's House and the 119th Congress. The Bible teaches us in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, 1st verse, that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. It's fair to say that in a democracy, there's a time to campaign and a time to govern. The election is over. This is a new Congress. The American people need us as their elected representatives in this season to put down our partisan swords and pick up bipartisan plowshares. It's time for us to come together, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans, to get things done for the people. In that spirit, House Democrats will work hard to find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues and the incoming administration on any issue, whenever and wherever possible, in order to make life better for everyday Americans. For far too long in this country, the cost of living has gone up, but the size of the middle class has come down. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Childcare costs are too high. Insurance costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. America is too expensive. There are far too many people in this great country who for decades have been struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. That is not acceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We need to build an affordable economy for hard-working American taxpayers, and we need to build it now. It's time for us to come together and finally lower the high cost of living in the United States of America once and for all. And we will work with anyone of any party to get that done. We will work with anyone to secure our borders, and we will work with anyone to fix our broken immigration system in a comprehensive and bipartisan manner. At the same period of time, we will push back against far-right extremism whenever necessary. So let me be clear. Social Security and Medicare are not entitlement programs. They are earned benefits. Hard-working American taxpayers pay in to Social Security and Medicare every day, every week, every month, every year throughout their entire adult life. They've earned those benefits, worked hard for those benefits, and deserve those benefits. So as Democrats, our promise to the American people is that we will fight hard to make sure that no one in this town takes away Social Security or Medicare from the American people. Not now, not ever. No means never. Our position is that it is not acceptable to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut veterans' benefits, or cut nutritional assistance from children and families in order to pay for massive tax breaks for billionaires and wealthy corporations. House Democrats will fight hard to protect working-class Americans and the things that matter to them, not the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Keep your hands off Social Security and Medicare. Over the last 4 years, it's been a great honor for us to work alongside President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, whose administration rescued the economy from a once-in-a-century pandemic, delivered historic infrastructure investments, created more than 15 million good-paying jobs, enacted common-sense gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years, provided life-sustaining health insurance to veterans suffering from toxic exposure, championed the largest investment in combating the climate crisis in the history of the world, which we will defend, and brought down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. Thank you, President Biden and Vice President Harris, for your powerful, principled, and purposeful public service. Thank you. Two months ago, the American people elected Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. Thank you for that very generous applause. It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. You see, one should love America. One should love America when you win and when you lose. That's the patriotic thing to do, and that's the America that House Democrats will fight hard to preserve because we love this country. America is bigger than any one campaign, any one election, or any one individual. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Let us never forget that our country is free, not simply because we are strong. America is strong because we are free. That freedom is now under assault. There are some in this country who apparently believe that the freedom of economic opportunity that made them wealthy should not apply to everyone else. Our message to that crowd is simple. Democrats will never abandon the long walk toward freedom. We will fight hard to defend the freedom of opportunity that makes the American dream possible. We will fight hard for the freedom to vote and to fight for a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We will fight for the freedom to organize and join a union of your choice. We will fight to defend the free enterprise system, but work hard to make sure that it actually works for working class Americans. And we will always defend a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. America promises one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's the America House Democrats will fight hard to preserve. God bless you. God bless the House of Representatives. May God continue to bless the United States of America. It is now my responsibility to present the gavel to the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana, the son of a firefighter, a God-fearing man, a husband, and a loving father of four, the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, all of our treasured colleagues here in the House. I'm grateful for this nomination. I'm grateful for this election, for the confidence this chamber has placed in me. It is the great honor of my life to serve this body with all of you. Of course, these are difficult days in our home state of Louisiana, where I come from. We all know about the terrorist attack in New Orleans, and it's really shaken our state. People are reeling from that attack. It took the lives of 14 innocent people, and it injured dozens more. And I wanted to begin appropriately today. If we could, I'd ask you all to join me in a moment of silence for the victims of this horrific act. Thank you. Thank you for that. I believe in giving honor where honor is due, and all of us do well to honor our spouses. My wife happens to be here this time. She didn't make it last time. It happened a little sudden. Kelly, would you stand up here in the gallery? Thank you. And we have our 4 children here, Hannah, Abby, Jack, and Will. Will y'all stand up just really quickly? Come on. I wanted to do that. All of us recognize that there are no perks to being a congressman's kid, right? It's all sacrifice. And our spouses put up with so much, endless hours in travel and all the responsibilities upon us. And we're good to remind them how important they are to us and how we could not do the job without them. And so it's appropriate for all of us to do that. Thank you, guys. This is a momentous time in the nation of the history of our nation. It really is. And as members of the 119th Congress, we are stewards of the great American Revolution that began almost exactly now 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. It will fall at the time of this Congress, the great anniversary. And in these 2.5 centuries, we've been reminded repeatedly that freedom is never free. And we have stood tall as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is without debate. We are the freest, the most powerful, most benevolent nation that has ever been in the history of the world. And it's not by happenstance. We are the ones who settled the West. We are the ones who ended slavery, who laid the transcontinental railroad, who gave women the right to vote, who won 2 world wars, who landed on the moon, and who won the Cold War. Throughout our history, we have done what no one thought was possible. And still, at 250 years old, our nation is actually a young nation. This past fall, I had opportunity to go to the G7 speakers meeting. It was held in Italy. It's the only international trip I took as speaker over the last 14 months because I didn't have time to do it, but it was a quick 3-day jaunt, and met with my colleagues, the speakers of the other parliaments, the great governments around the world. And we talked about that, how really special America is, how unique we are in our place on the globe, and how important it is for us to maintain that. And as I talked to these colleagues from around the world, I thought, our closest allies, who recognize how important we are, how important this body, this House is. I thought about how is it that such a young country has become so exceptional, so singular in its importance, that today stands as the world's leader in liberty and the economy and culture. 100 years ago, President Calvin Coolidge answered that very question in his inaugural address. It was March of 100 years ago, exactly almost. He said this: "We best serve our own country and most successfully discharge our obligations to humanity by continuing to be openly and candidly, intensely and scrupulously American." I love that. I love that. Today, yeah, that's right. That's an applause line. Today, my friends, our nation is the envy of the world. Why? Because we have been marked by a spirit and a people who are explicitly that. We are explicitly American. We don't try to be like other nations, and we recognize that a strong America is good for the entire world. And everybody around the globe knows that. That's right. We also recognize that the core principles that made America what we are must still be preserved today. The principles, I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but it's really the 7 core principles of the nation itself. Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. These are the ingredients, the things that made us who we are. And in America, we know that human flourishing is best achieved by adherence to time-tested truths. We could list a number of those simple truths. Here's a couple. It's better to give a hand up than a hand out. That innovation thrives when bureaucracy dies. The simple truth that it is parents and families and not administrators that must be in charge of their children's education. The path of prosperity has long been paved with policies that put America and Americans first. And that is what we will champion in the 119th Congress. We have a mandate, and that was shown in the election cycle. The people want an America First agenda. They do. Sadly, for the past 4 years of divided government, too many politicians in Washington have done the opposite. Open borders and overregulation have destroyed our cities and stifled innovation. Inflation and weak leadership have left Americans poorer, and they have placed our country in a perilous position. That's right. But in recent months, we've witnessed something happening, something that's really remarkable, a political moment in our modern history, a groundswell of Americans from every state, race, and religion who now demand that we put the interest of Americans first again, and we will, and we will. This is a powerful new coalition of our country. It's a coalition that insists that we purge the policies of America last and we bury them in the graveyard of history's mistakes, because it was a big mistake. To that end, this Congress will renounce the status quo and we will listen to the voices of the people. We will act quickly and we will start by defending our nation's borders. That's the #1 priority. Yes. In coordination with President Trump, this Congress will give our border and immigration enforcement agents the resources that they need to do their job. We will secure the border, we will deport dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens, and finally finish building the border wall. You said you'd work with us on that, Hakeem. I'm counting on it. After 4 years of high inflation, we have a big agenda. We have a lot to do, and we can do it in a bipartisan fashion. We can fight high inflation, and we must. We'll give relief to Americans, and we'll extend the Trump tax cuts. We're going to protect our industries from one-sided trade deals, and we're going to bring overseas investments back to America's shores. That's right. We'll defeat the harmful effects of inflation, and we'll make life affordable again for America's hardworking people. As leaders of a nation with vast natural resources that God has blessed us with, it is our duty to restore America's energy dominance, and that's what we'll do. We have to apply common sense. We have to stop the attacks on liquefied natural gas, pass legislation to eliminate the Green New Deal, that funding. We're going to expedite new drilling permits. We're going to save the jobs of our auto manufacturers, and we're going to do that by ending the ridiculous EV mandates. And as heirs to the American Revolution and the descendants of patriots who defied tyranny, in the coming months, we are going to pass legislation to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government known as the administrative state. We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of government. We're going to return the power back to the people. And in coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce. We need to do that. Our people do not deserve to be ruled by millions of bureaucrats they've never voted for, never met, and can never hold accountable. They deserve a government that is led by those they've elected to lead. That is how Article 1 is supposed to work. That was the idea of the Congress, and we will return to that principle. The American people have called on us to reject business as usual and throw out the status quo. We must and we will heed their call. This is especially important as it comes to our nation's military. For too long, the Washington establishment has sought to appease and accommodate our nation's adversaries. They've tried to replace our military warriors with social justice warriors. It does not work. And while we're still the most powerful fighting force in the history of the world, by God's grace, the same establishment has eroded the capacities of our Army and Navy and diminished the readiness of our Air Force. We have to put an end to this madness. My friends and my colleagues, I think we should all unite in this idea. It is time now to reinstate fear in our enemies, refocus our mission on lethality, and realign our commitment to peace through strength right now. We have to prioritize the things that matter most. We have to make adequate investments in defense. This is the most dangerous moment since World War II, and everyone around the world is looking to America and looking to this body to ensure that we maintain the peace. What we're proposing now is just simply, as President Trump likes to say, a return to common sense. And he's exactly right. That message resonated across the country. I am very thankful, personally, that this body is filled with men and women who are committed to that change, to return to common sense. We can do this together. We should. It is our responsibility to do so. When I first took this gavel, many of you heard me say that I don't believe in luck or consequence. I believe in the idea of providence. And this morning, I participated with many of you early this morning in the 119th Congress Interfaith Prayer Service. It was held at St. Peter's Catholic Church. Many of you were there. It was an ecumenical service and a bipartisan service, which was great. My good friend Hakeem Jeffries began by reading with the Old Testament. He read out of Deuteronomy 10. And then I was asked to provide a prayer for the nation. I offered one that is quite familiar to historians and probably many of us. It said right here in the program, it says right under my name, "It is said each day of his 8 years of the presidency and every day thereafter until his death, President Thomas Jefferson recited this prayer." I wanted to share it with you here at the end of my remarks, not as a prayer per se right now, but as a reminder of what our third president and the primary author of the Declaration of Independence thought was so important that it should be a daily recitation. Let me just read you that prayer. It goes like this. Thomas Jefferson's Prayer for the Nation, it's entitled. "Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable ministry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with thy spirit of wisdom those whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail, of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. That was Thomas Jefferson's prayer. Yeah. Suffer not our trust in thee to fail. We will not fail. We cannot fail. We are all in this together. Our nation is counting on us to band together and solve these problems and get this done. I've said before that I believe God has elevated each one of you, that's just my belief, to your positions of leadership. And it's an act of providence that you've all been placed in your specific roles in this specific moment at this historic time, at the 250-year inflection point of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is no small thing. We're also witnesses to the providence that spared our incoming president, President Trump, from the assassin's bullet, remarkable as that was, and to the new coalition of Americans that has risen from every creed, color, and cul-de-sac who want us to put America first. Our people are asking for a thriving economy and a rebuilt middle class and strong borders and a strong military, and we can deliver that. See, these objectives and these aims don't have an R or a D behind them. They have a USA. In just a few moments, we're all going to take an oath. It is the same one oath for one nation and under the banner of one great American flag. This is an opportunity for us to protect our shared American heritage, to maintain the conditions needed for self-government, and to defend what Hakeem said earlier, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Working together, we have the potential to be one of the most consequential Congresses in the history of this great nation, so long as we work together, we do the right thing, and we put America first. As we think about all we've accomplished in the past 250 years, we can only imagine what life will be like 250 years from now. Whatever the future may look like, if we do our jobs now, we can help ensure that our civic virtues will endure, that this nation will still be an example to all the world for its greatness and its example of self-government, and that in spite of our great challenges and even our disagreements and our healthy debates, this extraordinary institution, the People's House, will still be standing strong. Thank you all so much, and God bless America.
All right, everybody. House Speaker Mike Johnson has just finished speaking after being reelected Speaker of the House. The Louisiana Republican won the Speaker vote. After one round of voting, the round lasted longer than some expected it to because 3 House Republicans initially opted not to vote for Johnson. However, Congressman Ralph Norman and Keith Self changed their votes before the first round came to an end. So these switches enabled Speaker Johnson to reach the 218 vote threshold he needed to win. Shortly after winning the Speaker vote, Johnson outlined his objectives while addressing the new Congress. Let's go ahead and listen. All right, you know what? We don't have it, but there were a number of priorities, including finishing the border wall, restoring Americans' energy dominance, ending EV mandates, cutting back the size and scope of the government, creating a leaner federal workforce. I want to go ahead to our team coverage for you. CBS News congressional correspondents Nicole Killian and Scott McFarland are on Capitol Hill. Scott, we're going to go to you first. First off, I understand that you have a statement from the House Freedom Caucus that could explain why 6 members originally didn't vote for Johnson and then after the roll call did.
Yeah, they have set out this list of demands of Speaker Johnson, what they expect from him over the coming months now that they've supported him for Speaker. I want to keep an eye on the House floor as I tell you this. Among the things they want are things they've been arguing for many years. They want 72 hours, 3 full days before they have votes on bills that are offered. They want some efforts to combat the deficit on budget cutting. These are all things the Freedom Caucus regularly advocates for. They've now put this in writing almost as a message to the Speaker. You have our support for now. But if any 9 of us can get together, we can try to force a new vote, potentially replace the Speaker. What you're about to see is the swearing in of the rest of the U.S. House. The Dean of the U.S. House, the longest-serving member, which happens to be Hal Rogers, a Republican from Kentucky, will administer the oath to his 430-plus colleagues, who will all at once take the oath of office. Then they'll all step off the floor and take the oath of office symbolically by photo, one-on-one with the Speaker. That's Hal Rogers of Kentucky, raising his hand, administering the oath to his colleagues, some of whom are new, some of whom are newly elected members of Congress taking the oath for the first time, wives, husbands, kids, and grandparents in the upper chamber watching this happen. Speaker Mike Johnson takes the oath simultaneously. But really what we've seen today, Lindsay, I think in a fundamental way, is a group of 3 defectors indicating what could be the storyline of the opening months of this Congress and the Trump administration. The majority is slim. The majority is fickle. The majority can be treacherous. On more difficult votes than simply choosing a speaker, Speaker Mike Johnson may have an awful lot of balancing to do, and that reality was shown today, despite what Mike Johnson closed his remarks with, that he hopes this is the most consequential Congress of all time. If so, it'll be threading an awful lot of needles.
Scott McFarland, we appreciate you throughout the afternoon, keeping us up to speed on everything in your world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's go ahead and bring in Ed O'Keefe, senior White House and political correspondent in West Palm Beach. So, Ed, I understand we don't have a ton of time with you. I'm just going to ask you one question. If you want to add anything to the politicking that we saw behind the scenes today, and also if we're hearing anything from the president-elect and his reaction.
He has shared his congratulations with the Speaker on Truth Social. He was working the phones this morning into the afternoon to shore up support for Speaker Johnson, speaking with those that were holding out. We knew that he was making calls this morning. There are reports he has made them, or was making them, as that vote was held open. If you've been with us this whole time, you know that during that chaos there, the president was indeed engaged. There actually are some photos that have surfaced, wire photos from inside the House chamber of members on the phone with Susie Wiles, who is Trump's set-to-be chief of staff at the White House and a key aide who has been helping track this situation for the president-elect, a sign of what they were doing collectively here in Florida to shore up support for Johnson and ensure that this happened as hoped for this afternoon. As we said earlier, a win is a win for the Speaker and for the president-elect, but it was messy. And it will be, or what we saw today really is a preview of what's to come. It will be difficult for Republicans to get across the finish line as close as it is to Democrats in terms of the margins on a host of issues, all the ones the Speaker laid out there. If they can get even a handful of those done by Easter, it will be seen as a smashing legislative success for Republicans. But there are a suite of disagreements on all of those things among Republicans about how exactly to proceed. And on these kinds of big votes in these moments, certain members who hold out or who want changes made are going to have a huge amount of influence as they try to get these things done. Influence with the Speaker, influence with the President over trying to craft Republican-led policy. But either way, a sigh of relief here in Florida for the Trump team as the Speaker is now in place and the agenda setting and the legislating can begin.
Ed O'Keefe, can't extend enough gratitude for you being by my side for the last 90 minutes. Thank you so much. Let's go to CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian, who is with Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. Nicole?
Yeah, thanks so much. And Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. I just want to get your reaction right now to the Speaker-elect's remarks. What did you make of him and his message?
I think the Speaker's ready to go. Our members are ready to go. We have a lot of work to do. Short amount of time to do it, but we're going to demonstrate to the American people that we weren't just campaigning on talking points. We were campaigning on an agenda and a vision for the future of this country, and we're going to deliver.
Take us inside the room. Obviously, this vote, he did secure the votes, but it took a little while. It took a little negotiating. What was it like for you as you waited out this process?
Yeah, Honestly, nothing new for me. I've been here before, seen this before. I knew we were going to be able to get this done and get it done pretty quickly. There's really not much separation in terms of what everybody in our conference wants to accomplish. It's really about making sure that our body remains a member-driven organization and not a top-down organization. And I think that's really important and critical for our members, even the ones who voted for Speaker Johnson without any equivocation. I know that's something that's very important to them. So I think we were able to resolve it quickly. Now, work.
Yeah, and explain how the speaker was able to get to yes with a few members, because one of them, Congressman Keith Self, actually voted for you at the outset, but then switched his vote for Speaker Mike Johnson. I
can't comment on that one because I wasn't there for that conversation. I felt it was.
But did you have any conversations with Congressman Self or talk to him?
No, I didn't have any.
Did you know that he was going to support you?
No, it actually caught me off guard. I was in the back talking to two of my predecessors, Connie Mack III and Connie Mack IV, during that situation. So it caught me off guard. But look, I think at the end of the day, we have a Speaker of the House now. We're going to be focused on our mission ahead, and we have a lot of work to do. It really starts today. Tomorrow, we're going to have like a mini retreat, go over a lot of issues tomorrow, and really try to get to a place where we can land these multiple planes, if you will. Because it's about the American people. There are no excuses here. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and it's incumbent that we deliver, and I know Speaker Johnson's up to that task, and so are the members here.
I know you said that you didn't really have too much doubt in your mind, but how critical was it for the speaker to win this vote on the first round instead of this going multiple rounds? We saw they kept the vote open for a while.
I thought it was very important that the speaker find a way to get this done right now. I thought that was very, very important, and glad that was able to be accomplished. Now, next thing.
And in terms of the agenda, very briefly, obviously we heard the speaker lay out this America First policy of the president-elect, starting with securing the border. We also heard from leader Hakeem Jeffries, though, too, who said that Democrats are willing to work across the aisle. Is that going to be possible in this Congress?
That's up to the Democrats. The American people soundly reject open borders. They soundly reject selling off pieces of border wall. They soundly reject allowing millions and millions of people to enter our country through apps and across our southern border. And the American people spoke loudly this November. If the Democrats want to work on serious border security, they will have partners with Republicans on Capitol Hill. If they just want to talk about it and not be about it, well, then they're probably just going to vote no, but we're going to get the job done anyway.
All right, Congressman Byron Donalds, we really want to thank you for your time and for joining us, and certainly I'm sure we'll be talking to you again.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole, I want to ask you something because you also have some news about how at least one of the defectors may have come around to vote for Johnson. What can you tell us?
Well, obviously, we are hearing from one of them right now, Ralph Norman. If he comes a little closer to the camera, we might be able to hear more of what he is saying. But we do know in terms of Congressman Keith Self, he did say that he spoke with President-elect Trump earlier today, as well as after the vote. As Congressman Norman gets a little closer, I'm going to see if maybe we can get him to stop at the camera real quick. Congressman, why did you change your vote?
Love you, brother. We had a good discussion.
Can you stop very briefly? Why did you change?
Hold on, let me get over here right quick. I'll come right back.
Well, we're on live, so if you could just tell us very quickly.
No, I mean, we had a talk with President Trump. We got in there. You know, I never know how this stuff's going to come out. I didn't know how people are going to vote. The fact that we got together, Mike gave us his assurances he's going to fight for the things we think are important for the country. And was it worth taking another hour? Yes. And so I'm excited with the way it came out. Mike is too.
All right, thank you, Congressman. All right, so you heard it there. I may have lost my IFB very briefly, so I may or may not be able to hear you, but you heard directly there from Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina, one of two House Republicans who switched his vote in favor of Speaker Mike Johnson, saying that he, too, spoke with President-elect Trump and is taking Speaker Mike Johnson at his word in terms of some of the reforms that he would like to see going forward from the Speaker, and that is kind of what helps seal the deal for him, as I mentioned right before we got Congressman Norman, Congressman Keith Self, also someone who switched his vote after speaking with the president-elect. So clearly there was a lot of phones being worked, a lot of conversations being had, but now we know certainly that the president-elect did help play a role in helping Speaker Mike Johnson to secure this vote. And it really doesn't come as a huge surprise because the president-elect very vocally expressed his support for Speaker Mike Johnson, endorsed him in the run-up to this speaker's race, hosted him at Mar-a-Lago. The two have met many times. They met here in Washington not too long ago at the Army-Navy game, and they have really been strategizing in terms of how to implement the president-elect's agenda, which is something the speaker just laid out here on the floor in terms of talking about securing the border, in terms of talking about energy independence, in terms of fiscal responsibility, trying to cut the size of the federal government. All of these policies we heard the speaker lay out, but much of that stemming from President-elect Trump's agenda. So this also, there was a lot on the line for the president-elect from that standpoint, which is likely why he was very much involved in this process as all of this drama played out.
And there is no one better. It is a privilege to get to watch you and your cameraman work. Thank you so much for getting that live interview for us. We will continue to stay on top of any developments in this story, but we do want to get to some other news today as well. And the White House has announced that President Biden and the First Lady will travel to New Orleans on Monday to grieve with those impacted by the New Year's Day truck attack. Here's a look at Bourbon Street, which has now reopened. And as you can see, a vigil now marks the scene where 14 people were killed and dozens others were injured. We are also hearing from the brother of the attacker. Let's listen.
Everything was just how he had always been with me and around the rest of his family, you know, full of love, well-mannered, well-tempered, helpful. This is completely out of character for him, you know, these actions. And they're also not any type of representation of